Okay, so I made it 2 minutes and 25 seconds into Ben Shapiro's reaction to Lord of the Rings of Power Episode 5. Okay, so the Harfoots, the Hobbits, and singing. You need to learn a lot, I guess. Like, this is some shit where, like, I'm amazed that they know Tolkien this well. Okay? Like, I don't get your hate for this. Like, I do, and I'm gonna explain. Your hate for this is because you like the movies. And the movies are good. I like the Peter Jackson movies. I really didn't care for the last two Hobbit movies. I love the Lord of the Rings. I love the Silmarillion. I read all of these books, and they are taking big changes and strides with shit. But like, I'm kind of seeing where the story's going. I think, and there's a couple of things set up that could be Sauron, and his main bitch is the person that is Sauron. Okay, they're setting up two characters to potentially be Sauron. Really, that would be what he calls Gandalf, which is the stranger, which is Sauron, and then there is the man that saved Galadriel in the ocean. That could be Sauron, and I could make a compelling case for that. Here's the case for that: basically, Sauron is really good at making things like knives and swords and armor and shit. That guy Halbrand is really good at making things like swords and armor and shit. He whispers into the king of Numenor's ear, or King Regent. I don't know what the fuck that dude is. He in the book he's the king. I don't know what they're doing. I I like this show. I want to see more of this show. It has its good parts and its bad parts. But your main bitch is that they sing songs that are hobbits? Have you read Tolkien? Did you know that the song that you're bitching about, first off, I liked it because it's those who aren't wander aren't or those who are wander aren't always lost. Bilbo says that to Strider. Bilbo says that to Strider in the Fellowship of the Ring. Strider being Aragorn. Not all those who wander are lost. I loved that song. Like, obviously, they're not writing this shit for you. They're writing it for me. I don't know why, but I love it. Like, Galadriel, most of people's issue with her is that she's overpowerful and a Mary Sue or some sort of shit like that. And they don't get that really Galadriel is the like one of the most powerful people in the story. It's like saying why is Jesus Jesus? Like, or why does Gandalf do shit? Like, she's the Lady of Lothlorien. She wears a ring of power. She's like a ancient elf who was already good at magic and combat before she got that ring. She never took part in the war with Frodo and all that shit because her magic was essentially keeping Sauron from just taking over the earth. So, like, it looks like she's doing nothing. She's sitting there with her little pond, right? In reality, she's in the realm where Sauron exists. When Frodo puts the ring on, she lives there. Okay? That's why she wasn't fighting Sauron. She was fighting Sauron on a planetary scale because she's damn near a god. Just, I cannot believe how many people who watched that movie don't get that. Like, did you never like wonder about any of that? Why there was this big spooky dark lady that almost took the ring? Fucking idiots. Anyway, Ben Shapiro's main issue is that he doesn't like the Harfoots at this point. This is 2.5 minutes in. He could change everything he says for all I know, but I needed to make this point, and that's that the Harfoots are based on shit that Tolkien wrote about hobbits, and that's cool enough for me. In addition to that, that song that they were singing is based on shit that Tolkien wrote. And it's badass shit that Tolkien wrote. And then above all else, what they are doing in this story is making Ben Shapiro think that's Gandalf. He thinks he knows the story, but he doesn't. And he's bitching because he doesn't know that he's watching the Sixth Sense of Lord of the Rings films. They're not going to tell you that's Sauron for a long time. You will not know that Gandalf is Sauron uh, just from watching the show alone. I'm guessing until season 3. People are going to be disappointed. Like, I've heard that they've already written the entire show out to season 3 and they have outlines to season 5, and that they're only planning on making 5 seasons. If that is true, then from what I've seen, I have absolute faith that that's where they're going. They're telling the War of the Ring, they have to tell some certain things. Everyone's main issue seems to be that Amazon told everyone that they didn't have the rights to the Silmarillion. And that's true. They have the rights to the book at the back of the Silmarillion, obviously, because they're doing it. You couldn't do the Rings of Power without the rights to, in the Silmarillion, this much of the book is the Silmarillion. This much of the book is like the Rings of Power story we're reading, right? And it literally, the book ends, a new book starts within the same book, like the Bible. And now it's the story of the War of the Ring. And it's not exactly this, but this is like trying to make sense of Tolkien's least written time, basically. He didn't write that much about the connective tissue of some of these because he wrote a shit ton about the foundation of the universe. He wrote a shit ton about like The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, and then like beyond that, it's filling in the thousands and thousands of years of history, and he has notes and shit, and people can go through it. There's Tolkien scholars. I'm not quite that nerdy. I don't really care. I just want good stories. I want good stories based on Tolkien, and that's what they're doing. And if you don't like the story they're telling because you don't know enough about Tolkien to understand what you're watching, then I'm sorry. This wasn't made for you. It was clearly made for me, and I'm guessing that what's this fuck that owns Amazon must be kind of like me. He must love Tolkien. And if that's the case, I wonder if he thinks he's like an elf. Because he acts like one sometimes. Elves build big empires and think that they're doing good while stepping on people's backs. I'm more of a dwarf girl. The fucking dwarf storyline with Durin. Durin literally making Gil-galad give him a table because he can. In whose hands? I like that. That whole thing was just perfect. Elrond, I think, should maybe have long hair, but I kind of dig short hair Elrond. He works. He works. Arondir, they wanted a replacement for Legolas, and they wanted him to be black. He's fun. I really, really like the boy that he's interacting with, and I think his purpose is basically to make sure that that character does good things later rather than bad things. And he's kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi, so don't judge him too harshly. He's probably going to die. That would be my prediction. I think we're setting him up as a big hero to be a big tragic death in season 2 or 3. Oh, another thing, that sword that the boy has, everyone keeps calling that a hilt. That's not a hilt. It is. It's like a lightsaber. He deployed it, so he stabbed that thing into his arm, right? By stabbing the blade into his arm, it was drawing power from his soul, wielding it into a black blade, and he cut off fucking fingertips like they were nothing with a flick of a wrist. That's what that is. That's like Sauron's sword that he made for himself. That's fueled by hate. And I would not use that much. Just put it that way. Uh, the dark elf is not Sauron. There's several people it could be. Eol is a good theory. Uh, there's several others, but like if they're really going to go with something more in line with what was actually written, it has to be Magellan or whatever his name is, the last son of Feanor. It's an interesting turn to make him go dark, but I don't know 100% that that's what we're doing there. The orcs with him act really, really strange. They don't act like normal orcs. And maybe that's just the way they've written them in this story, but we've seen orcs act like normal orcs. Why don't the ones with Adar act like normal ones? Why do they call him father? I think, if anything, Adar might be a, what's it called? He might work for Sauron, or he might be trying to be Sauron. He's like one of the competing lieutenants of Melkor. It could be that. There's a lot of options for him, but he's not Sauron. Uh, he, I think we are intended to maybe think he is because he slams that guy into the ground. If you really know Tolkien's lore much, Sauron doesn't like to hear his own name. That made me think, ooh, maybe, because he can take the form of an elf. He's a shapeshifter. That's what you need to get about Sauron. We're looking for Mystique from the X-Men. He can change form at will from a bat into a dragon, into a vampire, into a werewolf, into a dark lord. He can do any of these things. He's very powerful. Like, this is one of the things that gets me about the Lord of the Rings movies is that basically they aren't really the books at all. They're good. I like what he did. But this is people who fell in love with an adaptation of a book and are now just crapping on another adaptation of a book in the same series because it doesn't line up with the thing they like. And in reality, this is what I wanted to see from them from the start. When I was watching the Fellowship of the Ring, I was reading the Silmarillion and going, why aren't we hearing this story? And the Rings of Power and all of that shit, like, start at the beginning. And like, this is the real issue, is that Peter Jackson's pitch should not have been the Lord of the Rings. It had to be the Lord of the Rings because just a million reasons. It should have been, I want to make The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and The Silmarillion. I want to make them all at the same time. And I want to make The Hobbit 2 movies that are each like an hour and a half long. I want to make The Lord of the Rings what it was. And then I want to make The Silmarillion however many movies it takes. Like, it's an impossible tome of a story to tell in a movie. It would have to be like a dozen movies. And like, this is the thing you don't get, is we're talking about 10,000 years of Elvish history or some shit like that. It's insane. It's insane. And as a result, I really dig this show because they have a foot in each world. They managed to please me, and I am very hard to please with Tolkien, and Tolkien. I am very hard to please with Tolkien. Like Vietnamese whorehouse. You give me Tolkien now. Anyway, Tolkien's work is so expansive and immersive and wide-ranging in topics that it's difficult to cover it in one movie. And like, the Lord of the Rings pitch was the correct pitch. We do 3 movies, one for each book, and we film twice as much shit as we're going to put in theaters. because that's the only way you really got anything approaching a tellable version of that story. And they're trying now to make this thing as like a test. If they can make this and make it good, I think they're going to try to make the Silmarillion. And this has to be well received and whatever. This is very expensive. It has to make financial sense. Yada yada yada. And Tolkien's family, I'm guessing, is like, we'll see how this shakes out. That's what I would do. They gave them rights to very minimal shit by comparison. And one thing I think a lot of people don't understand is that I think they have the rights to everything they need to tell the story Tolkien wanted to tell. I have full faith in that. Otherwise, the family of Tolkien wouldn't have sold them the rights. They have some sort of a pitch, and it's interesting. The thing I don't like about this show is Numenor. I could talk to you about why I don't like Numenor, but it's interesting. Uh, Numenor is the home of like giant. It is Atlantis. It's a giant empire of seafaring people that have colonies on the mainland. And this giant empire has 5 ships. Some of this, I think you need to understand, is like the world at this time does not have as many beings in it as it had in the movies that you remember. There are not as many men, for example, by a whole hell of a lot. Like, but you saw the men from those villages that ended up there at Arendir's watchtower. That is all of the men in Mordor that didn't get killed. So maybe let's say that was 25%. Let's be a little generous. Says 25% of them. That's still not that many people. Okay, and that is kind of how the time of man was for a while, but not at this age. So it's like they're trying to save money by mixing up shit, and it's weird. And for Numenor, they just make everything lesser. I'm not really sure the motivations behind all of that, but I think it's mostly just financial. Like I think they're trying to make as big of a deal of it as they can, and like they could only afford 5 boats, and really they could only afford 3 boats. That's why they blew 2 of them up. From a filmmaking perspective, having a big wide shot of 5 boats in a harbor, easy. Having a big wide shot of 2 of those boats blowing up, easy. Having 5 boats all out on the ocean at the same time, not as easy when you only have 3 boats. So my ghetto ass ghetto solution to that would have been to add more boats and blow them up, which I think is exactly what they did. And it provided a lot of other things. Someone in the writer's room made this suggestion basically. It's like, hey, we don't have enough boats. And we need to redeem the king of Gondor, Isildur, somehow, because he's a piece of shit, right? In the eyes of his father, at least. So we're gonna have to do that somehow. And we have this storyline with uh, the son of the king of Numenor, who's not the king of Numenor. Uh, he was the one blowing up the boats. I kind of think that guy is going to make it off of the island. I think he's going to be a black Numenorian, and I think he's going to be like the Witch King or something eventually, maybe, or somebody like that. He's one of the Nazgul, probably eventually. They were all great kings of men, right? He is in the nobility of that, and now they're starting to go talk about making colonies and shit. It's the ones that get left in Middle Earth that get given the rings. Like this is the thing is somehow we've got to get all the people we need from Numenor to Middle Earth, sink Numenor, uh, and then corrupt a bunch of the like. There's a whole bunch of story to tell. I am pissed listening to most of the reviews of this show because almost all of them expect character growth to happen in an episode? This is Tolkien. This is going to be a long show. Like, this isn't just one season of this. If you think you're going to get character growth and satisfaction from every character in one 8 episode season of television, you're sadly mistaken. Galadriel is growing a little bit. She'll probably grow more. She doesn't really bother me that much because, to be honest, she's right. We all know she's right. That's the point. The point of her character, and the reason that like Ben Shapiro and the rest of like the men don't like Galadriel is because they basically don't think that any woman can ever be right. I think it's part of it, and it's kind of a part of the people that are making this show are being all woke and diverse and inclusive and whatever, and you're just showing them that they're right by bitching about the things that you're bitching about. The problems with this show aren't the wokeness. There's nothing in this show that offends me, and I'm easily offended by wokeness. Go listen to me talk ever. Disa, the dwarf in the advertising, made me go, that doesn't look like Tolkien. And then in reality, they made her very Tolkien-y. Like, she doesn't have a beard, but other than that, she works. I like the singing. The singing to find the stone in the mountain thing, that is very Tolkien. It's nothing he ever wrote, but it's something he would go, I like that. It's one of those, it's definitely something that, like, the entire room, I think, agreed that that's something Tolkien would have been okay with. And I think that's kind of how they're writing this. They have a group of people like me who are writers and creatives that are obsessed with Tolkien, and they're sitting down and writing it by committee. And some people don't like that because they'll never be happy. Well, fine. They're making Tolkien movies that fucking are watchable. Yay! That's where I'm at. I get to see Durin. I get to see Elrond. Like, get over yourselves. I'm having fun. I don't know why you hate this show. There's no reason to, not in my opinion. I think it's a lot of political bullshit that, like, I'm sorry that you feel the way you do, and I'm sorry that you have allowed that to color your opinion of this show. It's a good show. I like it. I'm literally sitting here starting an insurrection against Joe Biden every night and liking the Rings of Power. Okay? Welcome to the show. Like, I don't really know why you all even don't like this, I guess. Could you explain it to me? Like, there's some of the storytelling aspects that I get where, like, I am, like, overlooking a lot of shit because it's Tolkien and I love it. And if you want to pick this apart, there are some things you could pick apart. Like I said, Galadriel seems like a Mary Sue if you don't know the universe. And, like, that's one of those big things. That the difference between Rey Skywalker and Galadriel is basically that Rey Skywalker, uh, Luke and Vader should not have been so overpowered, really, except for Palpatine fucking around with the Force and shit. She's not related to them at all. She's related to Palpatine, supposedly, and that doesn't make any difference to the price of tea in China, really. There's a lot of other shit. Like, it's one of those things that if you set up your universe that, like, this is the chosen one and the chosen one's descendants, and then this person isn't a descendant of the chosen one, doesn't make sense. That's one of my main issues with Star Wars. This, at least, they picked a character that legitimately is one of the most powerful characters in Middle Earth. Is she female? Yeah. Is she an elf? Yeah. Like, in the books, Galadriel during this time was studying. And we haven't seen what she's doing yet, really. She's not going to end up studying where she was supposed to. Like, this is the big change that I think that they made is they took Galadriel from being someone who studied magic in a cave for a couple thousand years and made her the commander of the armies of the North. And that brings Tolkien into the 21st century. And I'm sorry if you don't like that. I'm sorry if you don't like that there can be powerful women. There can be, and they have rights to have stories too. Like, I'm not trying to be a feminist here. I'm usually like ranting against feminism and talking shit about women. You've actually managed to make me go onto their side. Reconsider your thoughts. That's what I'm telling you. You're wrong.